When my daughter threw me into assisted living so her husband could renovate my house for resale. I disappeared without a word. But when they tried to sell the house, they discovered I still legally owned it, and had turned it into a shelter for homeless veterans. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. They called it temporary. That's the word my daughter used when she dropped me off at the Willow Pines retirement community, temporary. Just until the renovations were done, she said. Just while they modernized the old family home, my home, the one I built with my own two hands back in 1978. The one my wife died in. The one where I raised her. I was still holding my overnight bag when the door slammed shut and the tires crunched away on the gravel. No hug. No proper goodbye. Just a clipboard shoved into my lap by the facility director and a generic smile that told me everything I needed to know. This was not temporary. And they thought I wouldn't notice. That I was too old, too worn out, too sentimental to see the truth. My name is Raymond Cole. I'm 76 years old. I fought in Vietnam, worked 40 years as a union carpenter, buried the love of my life in the backyard under a maple tree we planted together, and I never missed a mortgage payment. Not once. I've got 2 titanium knees, a scar from a shrapnel wound that still aches in the rain, and until 2 weeks ago, I had a house filled with memories. Now, apparently, I'm just a burden to be filed away. My daughter, Stephanie, used to call me her hero. When she was little, she'd run into my arms every time I came home from work, her hands covered in finger paint and glue from preschool crafts. Her mother, God rest her soul, used to say, "Ray, that girl thinks the sun rises when you open your eyes." But something changed. After Laura died, Stephanie started listening more to her husband, Greg, the man with soft hands and louder opinions. A real estate agent with expensive shoes and no patience for anything over 50 years old, houses included. He called my place vintage, said the layout was a mess. Told me I needed a walk-in tub and maybe some supervision. The last time he visited, he stood in my kitchen, ran his fingers along the counter I built, and said, "This place has so much potential, Ray. Just needs a little love." I didn't realize love meant ripping my life apart plank by plank while they tucked me away like an unwanted heirloom. But I'm not an heirloom. And I sure as hell haven't forgotten who owns that house. They thought they could sell it out from under me. They thought I'd sign whatever paper they put in front of me. They didn't know I kept every title, every deed, and every receipt in a fireproof box under the floorboards. They didn't know who they were dealing with. And by the time they found out, it was too late. Willow Pines smelled like bleach and overcooked carrots. Every hallway looked the same, soft beige wallpaper, plastic sconces, and framed photos of flowers that had never grown within 50 miles of the place. I'd been here 2 weeks, but I still got lost on the way to the cafeteria every damn morning. The staff were polite, but distant. Young people with empty smiles and hollow reassurances. "How are we feeling today, Mr. Cole?" "Not you." "We." Like I was a shared delusion they were all humoring. I played along. The truth was, I didn't belong here. I wasn't like the others. I wasn't drooling into my oatmeal or watching game shows with a vacant stare. My mind was sharp. My back still straight, even with the titanium in both knees. And while I'd earned the right to rest, I sure as hell hadn't agreed to be shelved. My days were quiet. Mornings meant lukewarm coffee in a room full of coughs and clattering dentures. Afternoons, I sat under the magnolia tree out back, watching birds land on the wire fence. A few of the other residents would wander out, but they didn't talk much. Some couldn't. Others wouldn't. Then there was Gus. Gus was 84, former Navy, and twice divorced. He walked with a hunch and swore like a sailor when the nurses were out of earshot. We bonded over our shared disdain for the bland food and the facility's obsession with pastel-colored everything. He'd been dumped here by his daughter too, right after her husband took over his finances. They moved into my house 2 days after they locked me in here, he muttered one afternoon, flicking ashes into a paper cup. Said it was for my own good. Hell of a way to show love, huh? I just nodded, watching the magnolia leaves sway in the wind. We didn't have to explain much to each other. Men like us, we knew the language of silence. Gus didn't ask why I was there, and I didn't ask how long he'd been. But one day, he did ask something else. You sign over your deed yet? I looked at him sideways. Why would I do that? He laughed, a dry, cracked sound like old wood snapping in the sun. Good. Don't. That's when they really win. I didn't answer, but that night I pulled my fireproof lockbox from the false bottom of my overnight bag. I'd smuggled it in when Stephanie wasn't looking. Inside was everything: deed to the house, my military discharge papers, copies of the construction permits I'd filed over 40 years ago. I laid them all out on the bed, piece by piece, like a general surveying his battlefield. They hadn't beaten me. Not yet. And they had no idea what I still had planned. I wasn't supposed to leave Willow Pines without signing out at the front desk. But there's a funny thing about places that treat you like furniture: they stop paying attention when you sit still long enough. So I waited. 2 more days passed. On Wednesday, just after the 2 p.m. pudding cups, the activity coordinator wheeled half the floor into the sunroom for movie hour. I slipped out through the laundry exit. Old carpenter's hands still know how to make a latch behave. I walked 2 blocks to the bus stop, my cane thudding against the sidewalk with every step. I didn't need it, not really, but it made people underestimate me. That's always been useful. The ride to my neighborhood took 40 minutes. I sat near the back, ignored by teenagers and scowled at by an over-perfumed woman with a yapping purse dog. Fine by me. I had a plan and no interest in small talk. When I stepped off on Brookridge Drive, the air smelled different. Not like bleach and boiled cabbage, but like fresh-cut grass and the end of summer. Familiar. My block was unchanged, except for one glaring difference. My house, the one I built, had scaffolding on the porch and a dumpster in the driveway. The cedar siding I'd spent months staining was gone, stripped bare. A van with Greg Taylor Realty, Luxury Home Prep Services, was parked out front. My stomach tightened. I stayed on the opposite sidewalk, half hidden behind the neighbor's hedge. From there, I had a clear view into the open garage. Boxes were everywhere. My boxes. Labeled in Stephanie's handwriting: Dad's old tools, vintage junk, donation. With question marks that sliced deeper than she knew. Greg stepped into view wearing paint-splattered jeans and a Bluetooth headset. I watched him gesture toward the porch, talking to a contractor I didn't recognize. We'll knock out this wall, open the kitchen up. Big island, quartz counters. We're thinking mid-century modern staging. That demographic eats it up. The contractor nodded. What about permits? Greg waved him off. We'll get them after closing. Buyer's not gonna care. They'll tear it down in 5 years anyway. Then came the worst part. He pulled out a sheet of paper and pointed to it, grinning. Deeds in my wife's name now. Her dad signed it over before we moved him out. Her dad. That's how I found out they'd transferred ownership. My vision blurred for a second. Not from age. Not from emotion. From rage. I hadn't signed anything. I hadn't given permission. I knew I hadn't. I would have remembered. They forged something, or manipulated me into signing a blank page during paperwork for my stay at Willow Pines. They stole it. My home. My history. My blood and bone. I took one last look at the house, at the new address numbers they'd mounted in chrome, at the wreath on the door that wasn't ours, at the unfamiliar furniture visible through the bay window. Then I turned and walked back toward the bus stop. By the time I sat down on the bench, I already knew what I had to do. Greg and Stephanie thought I was some old man in a beige chair, watching pigeons and waiting to die. They were about to learn that this old man still had his claws, and that he'd been sharpening them. Back at Willow Pines, I waited until the halls quieted and the evening rounds were over. The night nurse, a sweet girl named Lydia, thought I was asleep. I could hear her humming outside my door. I picked up the landline next to my bed. The cord was tangled, the buttons worn, but it still worked. I dialed Stephanie's number by memory. Some things you don't forget, no matter how many years pass. She answered on the second ring. "Dad," she said, her voice bright but tense. "Is everything okay?" "It's late." "Just wanted to hear your voice," I said, slow and steady. "Been thinking about the house." There was a pause. Barely a second, but I caught it. "Oh," she replied. "What about it?" "I was wondering if I left that old circular saw in the garage. You know, the one with the dented handle? Thought I might use it if I come back home for the weekend." Long silence. "Dad, we talked about this. The house isn't really set up for you anymore. Greg's got contractors in there, and it's kind of a mess. It wouldn't be safe for you." I let the silence stretch. "Oh," I finally said. "I just figured I could stop by. Maybe sleep in the guest room." Another pause. Then, "It's not a good idea. It's just temporary here at Willow Pines, remember? We'll figure things out soon. Let's not rush." "You sure?" I asked, keeping my voice soft. "Just seems like you've made a lot of changes. Figured I should see it for myself." She laughed, but it was brittle. "Dad, please. You don't need to stress yourself. We're handling everything. Greg's got it all under control." There it was. "We're handling everything." They'd replaced me without even the decency of an honest conversation. My daughter, the girl I'd taught to ride a bike, whose wedding I'd paid for in full, was now gatekeeping me from the home I'd built. I leaned back against the pillows, gripping the receiver tighter. "All right then," I said. "I trust you." It was the biggest lie I'd ever told. Stephanie relaxed on the other end. "Thanks, Dad. That means a lot." "No problem, sweetheart. Love you." "Love you too," she said automatically, already distracted, probably reaching for her wine glass. I hung up, the plastic clacking softly in the quiet room. Trust? No. But now I had confirmation. They didn't just accidentally cross a line. They knew exactly what they were doing. And now, I knew too. The next morning, I skipped breakfast. My stomach couldn't handle cafeteria eggs and fake cheer. Instead, I sat in the window nook of the common area, the one spot where the morning sun cut through the stale air and gave a man a sliver of warmth. I opened my old leather-bound ledger, the one I hadn't touched since Laura passed, and began flipping through decades of entries. Receipts, property tax records, insurance adjustments, contractors I'd used over the years. All recorded in my stiff, measured handwriting. It wasn't just a notebook, it was a map of my life. Every number represented time away from my family. Every dollar earned was a blister, a pulled muscle, a missed Christmas. I turned to the back where I'd taped the copy of the original deed. Raymond M. Cole, sole owner, dated March 1978. That house wasn't a structure. It was my legacy. My grief. My wife's laughter still lived in the kitchen tiles she'd picked. Her perfume still clung to the closet door. Every corner held memories, and now it held strangers with hammers and blueprints. I knew what I had to do. It started with a call. "Reynolds and Watkins Law," the voice said. "Put me through to Saul Reynolds. Tell him Ray Cole's cashing in a favor." A pause. Then, "Yes, sir. Right away." 15 minutes later, I heard Saul's familiar gravel voice. "Raymond, you son of a gun. I thought you were already in a rocking chair somewhere. I am. But they parked the rocking chair in a prison. I need you. That got his attention. Saul had been my lawyer for 30 years. Handled my will, reviewed my permits, even helped me fight the city once when they tried rezoning my block. A good man. Grew up on the same side of town I did, believed in handshakes, not loopholes. I told him everything, what I saw outside the house, what Greg had said about the deed, the conversation with Stephanie. He whistled low. You didn't sign anything? No. But I think they tricked me into scribbling on some hospice admittance forms. Probably buried the transfer in a stack. That's forgery if they passed it as legal consent. And if they transferred it into her name while you're still of sound mind. I'm sound enough to gut them in court, I said, my voice low. He chuckled. That's the Ray I remember. Then I got quiet. I don't care about money, Saul. I just don't want them turning that house into a profit flip. My wife died in that home. My daughter took her last steps in that living room. I want to leave it for something real. Something Laura would have wanted. There was silence on the line. Then Saul's voice, gentler now, then we don't just fight this. We flip it. What do you mean? We gather proof, revoke the fraudulent transfer, and you file for special designation, historical ownership with charitable intent. You can assign the property as a protected trust. No sale, no remodel. You pick who gets it. I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger. Not satisfaction. Hope. What if I turn it into a shelter? I asked slowly. Veterans. Men like Gus and me. Hell, maybe Gus himself. That would complicate resale. That's the point. Saul laughed. Give me 48 hours. I'll draw up the paperwork. But I need signatures. Originals. I'll bring them. You sure you're up for that? I carried lumber on a busted knee in the middle of January for 30 years. I think I can handle a ride to a law office. We hung up. And then, for the first time since I arrived at Willow Pines, I smiled. 2 days later, I asked the front desk to call me a cab. Doctor's appointment, I said with a polite smile. It was technically true, Saul Reynolds had a doctorate in law, after all. The cab driver dropped me a block from my house. I walked the rest, slow and steady, each step like a drumbeat in my ears. The maple tree Laura and I planted was still there. Bigger now, its roots cracking the walkway. A familiar old friend, one of the few left. As I approached the front porch, the noise hit me first. Music. Loud and synthetic. Bass thumping through the walls. Then laughter, not the kind that warms your heart. The sharp, ugly kind. The kind that stings when you realize you're the punchline. The front door was open. I stepped inside. My home had become a showroom. The oak flooring was gone, replaced by sterile, polished gray planks that looked like vinyl. The family photos were stripped from the walls. My recliner, the one Laura gave me on my 60th birthday, was nowhere to be seen. In its place was a designer chaise lounge no one would ever actually sit on. And then I heard her voice. Stephanie. Dad's got maybe another year in that place, she said from the kitchen. After that, we could say he's lost his memory and file for full guardianship. That way we get legal power of attorney. I froze. Greg laughed. That would make things cleaner. I'm already talking to that guy from Austin, he's offering over asking, wants to demolish the back half and build a pool. Stephanie's tone shifted, colder. I don't care what he builds. As long as it's out of our hands and we're paid. I'm not waiting 5 years to inherit a house that smells like mothballs and grief. Grief. My hands curled into fists. Then I saw it. On the counter, an open bottle of wine. Next to it, a stack of old photo albums. Our photo albums. Laura's handwriting on the tabs. Her notes in the margins. The one that said, Christmas 1994, Ray built Emma's dollhouse by hand. Stephanie was flipping through it with one hand, glass of wine in the other. God, these are so depressing, she muttered. Look at Dad's outfits. He looked like an actual janitor. Greg snorted. He was basically a janitor with a pension. And then she said it. Sometimes I wish he had died before Mom. It would have been easier. At least she had taste. My breath caught in my throat. That was the moment. The last thread broke. Stephanie could have hurt me with carelessness. She could have manipulated me and maybe begged later. But she desecrated her mother's memory. That wasn't survival. That was rot. I turned and walked out without a sound. I didn't trust myself to speak, not yet. The wind felt colder now. Not from weather. From clarity. By the time I reached Saul's office, my hands were steady again. And I was ready to finish this. Saul's office was quiet, lined with dark wood and smelling faintly of lemon oil and old paper, a comforting kind of seriousness. A place where the world still had rules, and those rules still meant something. He stood when I entered. You look like hell, Ray, he said, half smiling. I've earned it. We shook hands like men who remembered what handshakes used to mean. He gestured for me to sit, then opened a file already thick with documents. Here's what we've got. First, I pulled the property records from the county clerk. 2 weeks ago, your daughter filed a deed transfer, quitclaim, supposedly signed by you. Not notarized. No witnesses. Fraudulent as hell. I nodded. She knew I'd never sign it knowingly. Exactly. So here's step 1. He slid a page across the desk. Affidavit of mental competence, signed by your primary physician and reviewed by our court psychologist. Verifies that you were of sound mind during the alleged signature and are of sound mind now. It makes their forgery look premeditated. He passed me another. Next, a revocation of the fraudulent deed. Filed under Civil Code 1081-3, reclaiming the property due to illegal transfer. And they can't sell it. Not once this is stamped. But that's not all. He pulled out the last set of documents, heavier paper, bound with a navy ribbon. This is the kill shot, Ray. I raised an eyebrow. It's a land trust designation. You'll retain ownership until your death, at which point the property automatically converts to a protected non-profit shelter for veterans. No resale, no demolition, no profit. I exhaled. That had been Laura's dream once, before the cancer. She used to talk about converting the old garage into rooms for displaced veterans. She said it was a crime how many were left out in the cold. This is what she would have wanted. Saul nodded. I remember. She was the one who made me cry during closing back in '78. First client ever to bring me a thank you pie. I smiled. Pecan. He leaned forward, more serious now. This'll burn your daughter, Ray. Legally, financially. You'll cut her out of the estate entirely. I didn't hesitate. She's already gone. Whatever part of her was still mine, she buried it with that wine glass and those photo albums. Saul slid a pen across the desk. Sign here. I signed each line with steady, deliberate strokes, the same way I'd measured boards and beams my whole life. Precision. Purpose. No regrets. When I finished, Saul sealed the package with a notary's stamp and tapped it twice. That's it. It's done. County records will update by Monday morning. The house is locked in. They won't know what hit them. I want to be there when they find out. He grinned. You've earned that too. Saturday afternoon. Willow Pines had bingo scheduled at 2, but I wasn't in the mood to pretend. I had a better invitation, one that came wrapped in hypocrisy and fake smiles. Stephanie had called that morning. First time in weeks. "Dad," she chirped, her voice oozing with pretend warmth. "Greg and I were talking, and we think maybe it's time for a little visit. We've been feeling guilty about how abrupt everything was with the move. Is that right?" I said. "Yeah. Why don't you let us take you out for lunch? Our treat. We'll drive over, pick you up, even bring your favorite, apple pie from Kearney's. They never brought pie. And lunch wasn't lunch. They picked me up in Greg's new Lexus, a smug little chariot that still had the dealership plate holder. I sat in the back, quiet as a tomb, while Stephanie filled the silence with empty chatter about weather, sales figures, and Alexa's learning pod. When we pulled into my old driveway, I understood. It wasn't a visit. It was a performance. "Come on in," Greg said, feigning hospitality as he led me toward the freshly painted front porch. "You haven't seen the upgrades." Inside, it looked like a catalog threw up. Faux mid-century furniture. Gold fixtures. Art that didn't mean anything. The soul had been sucked out and replaced with resale value. Stephanie gestured like a realtor. "Looks amazing, doesn't it? Clean, modern. Minimalist." "It looks empty," I said. Greg chuckled. "Old places need new energy, Ray. You know how it is. Besides, we've had serious interest. One buyer's flying in from Austin this week." Then Stephanie dropped the real bomb. "We were thinking, after the sale closes, maybe we can move you to that high-end assisted living center in Pacific Grove. The one with the wine tastings and rooftop yoga." I stared at her, dead-eyed. "You mean the one that costs $12,000 a month?" She smiled brightly. "Well, yes. But that's what your house is for, right? You always said you wanted us to use it wisely." I said I wanted you to respect what it meant. Not gut it and turn it into a spreadsheet. Greg waved a hand. "Let's not get emotional. It's just a house." That was the last line. I straightened my back and looked them both in the eye. "I'm glad you're feeling confident. Truly. You've already spent the money in your heads, haven't you?" Stephanie tilted her head. "What are you talking about?" "I mean, the renovations, the down payments, the lifestyle upgrades. You've got it all planned, don't you?" Greg narrowed his eyes. "We do." "Why?" I pulled a folded envelope from my coat pocket and handed it to Stephanie. "What's this?" "Legal notice. You'll want to read it carefully." "Go ahead." She opened it. Her face changed on the second page. Greg snatched it from her. "What the hell is this?" "It's a revocation," I said. "Turns out, forging a signature is still a crime. Also turns out, I never lost legal ownership. Not even for a minute." "But," Stephanie stammered, how? Everything you did was based on a lie. And now, the house is no longer yours. It's in a charitable land trust. Protected. Untouchable. It will become a shelter for homeless veterans." Greg turned red, mouth open like a beached fish. "You can't do that." "I already did." "You'll regret this," Stephanie whispered. "I'm your daughter." "No," I said calmly. "You were my daughter. Laura would have cried if she heard the things you said. You remember her, don't you? The woman whose house you gutted." They stood there, frozen. The Lexus beeped in the driveway, its automated system reminding them that everything in their life was temporary. "I think I'll walk home," I said, heading for the door. "You two need the ride more than I do." The walk back to Willow Pines took me nearly an hour. I didn't rush. The late summer sun filtered through the trees, casting long shadows on the pavement. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't thinking about lawyers or betrayal or empty wine glasses on stolen countertops. I was thinking about Laura. About the way she used to hum while pruning the hydrangeas out front. About the way she'd rest her head on my shoulder during late-night thunderstorms. About her laugh, soft but sharp, always just on the edge of knowing more than she let on. She would have loved what I did. Not because it was revenge. But because it was right. Back at Willow Pines, Lydia greeted me at the front desk. "Out for a stroll again, Mr. Cole?" I nodded. "Had some unfinished business." She smiled. "Looks like you got it done." I headed down the hall, past Gus's room. He was in his usual chair, chewing on a cigar that wasn't lit and watching the muted TV. I paused in his doorway. "Still interested in a place to stay that doesn't smell like disinfectant and regret?" He squinted. "You offering, or is this another one of those Alzheimer's jokes?" I grinned. "Serious offer. House with a big backyard. Garage needs fixing. But plenty of room for guys like us." He sat up straighter. "You talkin' real house?" "A real one. No stairs. Clean beds. Veterans only. Laura's shelter, I'm calling it." Gus blinked hard. "You name it after her." "Wasn't mine to name. Just mine to protect." He nodded slowly, as if the meaning took a second to sink in. Then he looked up at me, eyes glassy. "You're a good man, Ray." "No," I said. "But I finally remembered how to be." That night, I sat under the magnolia tree behind the facility. The air was cooling, cicadas humming somewhere in the distance. I opened my old notebook one last time, not to calculate, not to plan. Just to write one thing. Legacy is not what you leave behind for your children. It's what you leave standing when they forget who you were. I closed the book and leaned back. And for the first time since Laura left this world, I didn't feel alone.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.